In a previous Disneyland update, we talked about what measures Disney was rumored to be thinking about if and when the parks reopened. The ideas were kind of nutty, and in the end, I felt like they were just too implausible, that we wouldn't see Disneyland reopen until early next year when there was possibly a vaccine. I mean, who wants to go to a Disneyland with no parade or no fireworks or, no ability to really be in Disneyland the way that we're accustomed to being? Now, most folks agreed with this assessment, thinking, like I did, that it's better if Disneyland were wait until we're something approaching 100% functional, and that means rides, shows, and entertainment and food. Now that was just 2 weeks ago, and for me it feels like a lot has changed since then. Every day it feels like we're getting actually further away from the idea of reopening the parks. But then I hear stuff that makes me second guess that whole concept. Maybe they are thinking about this. For example, Disney is, or at least they were, I don't know if that's still the case or not, Disney was accepting reservations starting June 1st. So you can make a reservation for something at Disneyland, be that a hotel or a restaurant reservation, starting June 1st. And all I can ask is why? What do they know that we don't, that would suggest to them that it's okay to start taking those reservations on June 1st? What confidence do they have that I don't? Well, I mean, it's probably nothing. And I have a feeling there's a very real chance that date will probably get pushed back, that those reservations won't become a reality if they can't open the park. And so far, what I'm hearing and seeing today suggests that's not possible. And then I hear things like what Bob Iger suggested recently in an interview. Bob Iger suggested that they're discussing talking about doing things like testing guest temperatures at the gate. This as part of a larger plan to reopen the parks ahead of any kind of vaccine. To quote Iger, but in the absence of a vaccine, it could come from basically more scrutiny and more restrictions. In other words, Disney is preparing or thinking about a park opening without a vaccine. Not necessarily that they are going to do it, that is definite, but they're at least talking about it. It's in their thoughts. Now, before I move on, I do want to say this about testing people's temperatures at the gate, which some people have suggested. Testing a temperature is not a test for coronavirus. It's just saying that whether or not you are symptomatic of it, that you have a fever. That's all the checking is for a fever. You can still have it, you can still carry, you can still transmit without having a fever. So I'm not sure that that's the be-all and end-all of saying, hey, if we test your temperature at the gate, then we're good, right? No, not even remotely close to that. They get that idea, I think, from the reports that we're seeing from China, where they are starting to let people in to places like malls and whatnot, and they're testing their temperature before they enter the mall. This is a far different scenario than that, and I don't think that that's a strong enough step. There has to be a whole lot more to go on besides just that. But I digress. Disney is not the only company, it's not the only entity that is thinking about a life or opening things up again before a vaccine. It's been reported that the White House has already been in discussions with the commissioners of every major sports league out there. And baseball is the first thing to come up with this completely wild and crazy idea. They're talking about conducting an entire baseball season in a sports biodome. And no, not that biodome, nothing like that, no. In this case, Arizona would be the home to every baseball team and every baseball game, or at least as many as they could fit in that biodome, and play as many games as they could play in that area. In this case, every player, every staff member, every facilities person, they would all be tested, and only those testing negative for coronavirus would be allowed into the biodome. And then once they determine who those folks are, they would play the entire season in quarantine, which means nobody in or out while they're playing those games. It's crazy. And not just because of the audacity of it, but really when you think about the messaging and the signals that are being sent when they do something like this ahead of a vaccine. Because we already know how difficult it is still in this country to get tested for COVID-19. It's happening a lot easier in other countries, but here in the States, it's not that easy to get tested. But what they're going to do for the people who want to watch baseball is test all those people that are going to play baseball and run the facilities, etc. They're all going to get a test. It's kind of in the absence of any sort of solution to this problem, they're creating more danger and they're creating more, I don't know, animosity for millionaire baseball players and millionaire baseball leagues. Now, I get that this isn't just for them. It's for us too, because I'll be honest, I would love to watch a baseball game right now. I would love to watch a baseball game right now. So if you were to ask me, would you mind if they tested a baseball player in order to do this? I might say yes to that. I don't know. I might. Anyway, I don't know. It's a nuanced conversation. There's a lot of things to consider. I could argue both sides, and I could agree with both sides of that argument. But really, and it's a crazy concept, but what it goes towards, again, is folks trying to come up with a way to live with this situation, to live with the virus, instead of trying to live after it. Okay, there's more. It's not just sports. Disney has released a couple weeks ago, or like a week ago, a new film release schedule for not films that are going to be released on Disney Plus in theaters. The first one being Soul on June 19th and then Mulan on July 24th. And again, I have to ask the question, how? What do they know about June 19th or July 24th? What do they know that we don't? What gives them confidence to put a movie in the movie theaters? Do they think people will go? We're not even allowed to go in. Movie theaters aren't open, but they're going to be open in 2 months? We're going to let guests into movie theaters in 2 months? Is that what they're saying? Surely, by the time they decide they're going to open these films, social distancing will still be a thing. Considering that, okay, if that's the case, how many seats could you sell in a movie theater or a sporting event for that matter? How many seats could you sell while still respecting our current social distancing standards? 6 feet. As I'm fond of saying, I am not a scientist or a therapist or a social engineer, but I gave it a shot anyway. I made a spreadsheet. I made a small grid, a 12 by 12 grid, 144 seats total. And on this grid, I set it up so that each guest was separated by at least 2 empty seats to the left and to the right, and by at least 1 empty row in front of and behind. And it looks something like this. Out of 144 seats, that's 24 seats total, or 16%. Now, I don't know if that's enough to make a profit on a film, but if it's not, does that mean they don't do it? Or does that mean they sell more tickets? What are they thinking about doing here in this situation? If theaters open on June 19th and we're still managing social distance standards, what has the priority? Is it less social distancing or is it less profit? And that's not an easy question. A lot of folks are going to say, oh, they're going to take the profit all day. I don't think so. I don't think so, because there is too much at stake. There are lawsuits and all kinds of things that can go wrong. If something bad were to happen, if there were to be an outbreak because they set too many people up at the AMC theaters, that AMC is done. They're out of business forever. So let's take that conversation back to Disneyland. And before we do that, let's remember that there is a difference between going to Disneyland and going to a movie or going to a sporting event. It is significantly easier to control crowds in a stadium or in a movie theater. All you have to do, sell fewer tickets and then tell people exactly where to sit. You can sit here and you can sit here, but you can't sit there. There is little to no chance whatsoever that you can exert that same kind of control over guests in Disneyland, because there's no seats, okay? And people are organic and they walk wherever they want. And I don't know, how are you supposed to do that? Especially, yes, you can sell fewer tickets. That's obviously the first step. But then what? How do you manage, just on the very first day, you open up at 8 a.m., how do you manage rope drop? Because there's gonna be a rope drop. You set a start time for something that is popular and people want to attend, they're going to line up for it. And it's not like you can cleanly stagger those guests at rope drop 6 feet apart. Sure, Target and Walmart can do it. They can with 50 people, but what about thousands? What about thousands? You can set tape up outside the gate, to keep people 6 feet apart before they enter Disneyland. That queue, Who knows how long that queue would wind up being if everybody's 6 feet apart. Problem one, okay, before the park even opens. We haven't even, okay, forget rope drop. Let's get in the gate first. But okay, let's say you did manage that and you got people in there. Now where do you put all those people for the 15 minutes before the park opens? You say don't let them into the park until 8 a.m. Don't start opening the gates until 8 a.m. Okay, so where do you put those people in the Esplanade? Again, that goes back to that other question. It seems impossible. In the last video, I suggested something like 50%, but then that wasn't enough, and maybe like 30%, especially if they're going to be using virtual queues, which, by the way, seems more and more like a likelihood if you believe this image. And let's say it is 30%. Will we also be getting 30% staff to herd those people? I sure hope not. I sure hope that Disney does put in at least something close to normal staffing to manage those, because there's one thing I know. There's enough guests out there who cannot or will not be herded. You can't manage them. I know that a lot of you can mind your 6 feet. You can manage yourselves. You can be respectful. I know that because I can do it. But the majority of those folks who can do that probably aren't going to be going to Disneyland anyway, because it is still, even at 30%, a scary proposition to go to the park. I'm second guessing myself if I'm going to be going when they first open it, if they're doing it without a vaccine. I'm seriously really thinking about it. It does worry me. It does concern me being amongst a crowd of people, even a reduced crowd. Go to a grocery store or go to Target and tell me how you feel when you're in there, even with just 50 people in the store. Tell me how do you feel when you're there. But again, it does, in spite of all that, it does sound like Disney is at least thinking about some kind of plan in this regard. There is a rumor being discussed on the MiceChat forums right now by the same guy who started, the rumor was posted by the same guy who posted the rumor about Magic Happens, and that came forward. But this rumor is talking about Disney canceling any sort of event where a crowd would gather. Fireworks, parades, World of Color, Fantasmic, but that is not all. Frozen at the Hyperion, Mickey and the Magical Map, the Golden Horseshoe, you name it. Anything where people collectively sit close together, gone. One thing we might see is the Disneyland band, but they won't be stopping at the Sleeping Beauty Castle or anywhere else for that matter. They'll come out from backstage playing as they walk, and they're gonna keep on walking in front of Sleeping Beauty Castle and around the hub and down Main Street. Try to keep up, because they're gonna keep going around Town Square and then backstage again. It's wild, right? And I would be the first to say that's not really the kind of Disneyland that I want to go to. I don't want to go to a limited Disneyland. But then I think about this. This thing is not going to just stop being a thing. It's here, and it's here for good. Maybe not like we know it today, maybe not as bad as it is right now, but it'll still be something that we have to remain conscious of for a very long time to come. There is a new normal in our future, and maybe we do need to start thinking about ways to live with it instead of living after it. I asked you guys in our last video on the topic to vote, and if you were willing to go to a limited Disneyland or wait until we got some kind of okay to go, signal from the government. Overwhelmingly, you voted to wait. I'll ask again, but in a different way, in a way that's more clear, especially knowing now what we know today as opposed to 2 weeks ago. Would you go to Disneyland without a vaccine, no matter how long it takes? Vote in the poll above and leave a comment below. And until next time, guys, thank you very much for watching. I do hope you are staying safe out there and being well. And please be mindful of other people while you do that. We're all in this together. Think of each other, and we will get through. I love you guys very much. We'll see you next time. Fresh baked.